during the English Civil War, some of the highest death tolls during that time was at Rowton Moor. The Battle of Rowton Moor took place on September the 14th, 1647. Lord Bernard Stewart and Marmaduke Langdale led King Charles's Royalist army against Oliver Cromwell's parliamentarians, led by Colonel Michael Jones. During the brutal battle, more than 600 Royalists were slaughtered, including Lord Bernard Stewart. Around the anniversary of the battle, there are sightings of Lord Bernard Stewart's ghosts riding on horseback across the moor. There are also reports of music echoing in the distance, which is thought to be played by King Charles's court musician, William Laws, who died on the battlefield. Boughton Heath, darting out from the side of the road, a speedy figure crosses in front of oncoming cars before vanishing on the other side. Blackmere, close to Brereton Hall, before the death of a family member, tree trunks would be seen floating in the water. Occasionally the water would also turn red. Bunbury College Lane, a ghostly man on horseback, is said to cross the lane before vanishing. Also in Bunbury, a phantom dog has been spotted in an area near the school. The Queen's Hotel in Chester was one of the Grand Railway hotels built. The Queen's Hotel itself was built in 1860 with the express intent of keeping the poors away from people of proper breeding. The prestigious hotel was built with a covered walkway to take first-class train passengers directly from their platform to the hotel, with no risk of peasants dirtying the eyeballs of their betters. It was probably a great laugh for the rich people of the time. Their hubris appears to have angered the paranormal. Only the occasional ghost is spotted using the sealed path now, but those unfortunate enough to catch sight of the path at the wrong time. Some 8 years after the Queen's Hotel opened, a train departing Chester Station collided with a trailer full of paraffin tanks, which promptly exploded, setting the whole train on fire and killing 32 passengers from the hotel. One theory goes that these deceased passengers are the ones you can spot on the sealed walkway these days, coming back from their interrupted journey in confusion at what still befell them. The Queen's Hotel itself may be cursed. It caught fire about a year after opening, fire being a running theme here, with what was at the time the female servants' quarters only suffering smoke damage. The smoke damage was repairable, so repair these quarters the workmen did, and they did so. When they did so, they found the mummified corpses of a newborn baby under the floorboards. In the latter half of the 1800s, an illegitimate birth was an incredibly shameful thing, and it appears that tragically some poor woman gave birth in a room, then smothered the baby before hiding the evidence. After this came to life, she threw herself out of the window to her death. This is now room 301, and it isn't uncommon for guests staying there to call down to reception, complaining of being able to hear a crying baby at night. There are a few famous entities to contend with. A chef hung himself in the cellar, and there now appears to be a ghost there, as well as an apparition that is spotted at times. There are also wet footprints trodden about down there when there should be no one around. Weirdly, it's claimed that it is not the chef who killed himself haunting the cellar, but instead the person who found the body who lingers beyond the grave. The most brazen spectre of the hotel to bother people is in room 230, with encounters within weeks of each other happening in 2015. A lady staying there was awoken to see a figure of a mustachioed blonde man in a tailcoat stood watching her, beating his hands on the end of the bed. They thankfully vanished after terrifying the poor woman. A couple staying in room 230 were awoken by banging at the window to see this same well-dressed spirit standing outside and what could only be thin air. Having woken the couple up, the figure climbed into the room, then climbed into the bed with the poor couple. They ran out of the hotel at 3 a.m. and refused to go back in. Baths mysteriously fill themselves. Orbs turn up on a camera, and speaking of things turning up on camera, a skeletal bride has been captured in the background of pictures taken during wedding functions at the hotel. It's said to be haunted by the ghost of a little girl. She's frequently spotted on the second floor in an area that was said to have once been a nursery, and people have reported hearing her tricycle in the corridors at night. A ghost is said to sneak up on female guests as they fill up their baths in the hotel. Some even claim that mischievous spook has pulled their hair. The Pied Bull is a historic pub in Chester which dates back to the 11th century. It's believed to be the oldest continuously licensed premises in Chester, and a pub I know very well, being on the route from the car parks to the city centre. In 1533 the pub was known as the Bull Mansion and has a wooden staircase was handmade and installed. This is still standing today. In 1784 a coach began running from the hotel. In 1854 the hotel placed to George Borrow before he embarked on his tour of wide Wales. The cellar is the focal point for the haunting, so much so that staff do not like to go downstairs on their own. The story goes that a man named John Davis fell down the stairs of the cellar in 1609 while holding a knife, and tragically died as a result of an accident. It's thought to be his ghost that still haunts the cellar. There's also said to be the spirits of a former chambermaids present in the upstairs bedrooms as well, especially in rooms 7, 8 and 9. They so loved working at the hotel, they've simply never bothered to leave, even after their deaths. It's no surprise that the George and Dragon Hotel is haunted, when you consider the fact that it sits just outside the notorious Northgate Arch, which is also known for its paranormal activity. The George and Dragon is a stunning Victorian building that occupies ground that straddles the old Roman road. This is likely why it's said to be haunted by spirits of a Roman soldier. A Roman military law meant that legionnaires were not allowed to be buried inside the fortress, so memorials lined the road. These have been moved to the Chester's Grosvenor Museum, but it seems that the spirit of those soldiers have remained. Staff at the George and Dragon have reported hearing marching feet beneath the floors, following the same route that the Roman road would have taken. The noise is loudest in the cellars, which are closest to the original level of the road, would have been since the current road is several feet higher. The Old King's Head is on Chester's Lower Bridge Street and was built in 1622. It's allegedly the home of 13 ghosts. Once or twice a week, staff report disembodied voices, the sound of children laughing and playing in the dead of the night, and poltergeists pranking the unsuspected. There's a ghost of a lost little boy, plus a dark entity that roams the whole building, and the ghost of a tall, well-built man who has an unpleasant demeanour. In the bedrooms, guests have reported having their covers being removed, and a phantom dog is said to stalk the rooms. Others claim to have been shaken awake at night, heard loud knocks on their doors and unexplained bangs in their rooms. There's also said to be the floating corpse that appears over the bed in room 3. And in room 4 a woman is said to appear at the window, as well as the spirit of 2 men who duelled to death over her. During renovations in the 1930s, a sword was uncovered beneath the floorboards of room number 4. Could this have been what the phantom was in search of? The sword now hangs in the wall of the bar. In 1982, one woman who was staying in room 6 when she was awoke to find a man in black standing by a bed watching her. She said she did not feel at all menaced by his presence, and he remained there for roughly 15 minutes before simply vanishing. Barlow's Public House, also known as the Old Votes, on 28 Bridge Street, Chester, is said to be haunted by a former landlord. The haunting here consisted mainly of banging sounds and loud groans. At the old Bluebell Inn in Chester, witnesses have seen a beautiful maiden, Henrietta, waiting at the first floor window for a lover and Civil War fighter to return from the battle. He was slain at Rowton Heath in 1645, and stricken with grief she staggered into the cellar and committed suicide. The Bear and Billet on Lower Bridge Street has a ghost of a maid who died of starvation after being locked in a room. She's reported to haunt the staircase, but appears only to men. The Marlbororough Arms in St John Street. The misspelling of the pub signage is no accident, nor my pronunciation. According to tales in the 19th century sign writer, was spooked by the ghost of a former landlord who had slit his own throat that he rushed to finish the sign and didn't even notice the mistake. The landlord makes himself heard in the basement. Thornton's in Chester is said to have the ghost of a scorned bride named Sarah. She's reported to mope around the building, wreaking havoc with shop staff. It's said that she's haunted the building for more than 200 years and takes great pleasure in moving objects around to give both staff and customers the creeps. Although Sarah has not been recently, male customers in particular get a very unpleasant feeling of being watched. She gets particularly worked up when the Valentine's Day chocolates are put out on display. She's been known to scatter them all over the floor, while the standard boxes are left alone. Rumours say that Sarah hanged herself in the early 19th century after a fiancé jilted her at the altar. And mediums have claimed that her ghostly activity is a way of reaching out for help to find him. Sarah has also proven to be very useful to local police. On one occasion, a burglar broke into the shop and tried to break into the safe. However, Sarah gave him such a scare that he fled the scene, leaving behind his tools and a complete set of fingerprints. The shop is apparently haunted by 3 different ghosts. These include a large jovial man in an apron, a more insubstantial male spirit who is almost invisible, and finally Sarah herself. At Sofa Workshop in Chester have recalled various ghostly sightings in recent years. During the 18th century, the building was a public house called the Hand and Snake, and according to local legend, young boys used to work within the pub, cleaning the powdered wigs of aristocrats that visited. This was done using arsenic, which caused the death of many of them, and rumours have it that the ghost of a little boy can sometimes be heard sobbing and playing with what sounds like a toy car. Current staff report black shadows appearing in the shop and the constant feeling of being watched. Although Barista's building appears to be safe from paranormal activity, the coffee shop is not without a story. The building was actually a home to one of the very few families in Chester who survived the outbreak of the bubonic plague in 1647. The Black Death was one of the most devastating pandemics to hit the city, wiping out over a quarter of its population. But the Barista building was one of the only spots to keep its family safe from the grisly death and the plague brought with it. Sally's Secret Garden is a gift shop with a coffee garden, and whilst the whimsical name refers to the cafe area on offer, there do seem to be several hauntings that can be added to the list of secrets to be found there. A Grade 3 listed building with specifically Grade 2 Carolean design ceiling dating back to the 1670s. The premises has a reputation for some pretty bold poltergeist activity, to the point that it's regularly caught on security cameras. There's a fair amount of disruption recorded now, up to and including multiple heavy-set paintings falling off the wall at once, and assorted investigations seem to point the finger at a spirit of a young boy running about the place with a toy still in hand. Innocent chaos, really. But there are two more worrying spirits that came part and parcel with the beautiful ceiling. In an upstairs part of the cafe, you may have the misfortune of bumping into a monk or a previous owner who was a sea captain that died with a chest infection. The monk may turn up in a corner seat with a window, share the same seat he is in, and you become short of breath until you move away. Sit on the couch in the sea captain's favourite room when he's around, and you'll develop chest pains until you leave the room. At the Bombay Palace in Upper Northgate is a family-owned Indian restaurant. At 3 a.m. one night, in the run-up to Christmas 2013, the owner, Aaron Ali, was sat in the dark after closing. He was front of house when a banging noise came from the back of the restaurant. Alone, afraid and worried someone else might be in there with him, Mr. Ali gets his phone out to record. In his panic, he left the camera set to take stills, there being no living person there with him that night. But he caught something on the camera anyway, despite being alone. The men's toilet had a door propped open by a mop, the normal end of a night bit of cleaning to help air it out. Whilst not recording a video, was taken through this door, catching the mirror in the deeper darkness beyond. Apparently at first, just like a mirror, was someone catching some light, at least until the light in the mirror is zoomed on, and what looks like a white mask of some description caught in the mirror, just hanging in the air. It's pretty damn creepy to look at. Mr. Ali insists there is no photo manipulation. In fact, I think he said he would have no idea how to do it. But multiple people, both staff and customers, have been saying for years before the picture evidence that they felt something was in the back of the restaurant. Furthermore, in the 1980s, a coffin was found in the basement. And now I'm not sure how to pronounce this word. It's spelt the Dewa Centre, but I think it's the Dewa Centre. It tells the story of the Roman era in Cheshire and has much more sinister story behind it. The story here have also been given a new lease of life thanks to talking walls within the building, said to be the home of three spirits named Nathaniel, Charlotte and Brandon. One of the most well-known Chester ghosts is the spirit of a Roman legionnaire who's said to appear at the city walls. He's most often seen between the amphitheatre and Newgate. It's said that the legionnaire was in love with a local Brythonic girl. When I read it, it actually said Celtic, but you may know I prefer the word Brythonic. And he frequently left his post in order to meet with her. However, the girl's parents ended up taking advantage of this situation. And one night, when the legionnaire had left his post to meet the daughter, they killed the sentries that were left on guard and snatched up as much loot as they could carry. When the love-struck soldier returned home, he was murdered by the mob. Now he remains close to his post, doomed to the duty he neglected in his life. St John's Church is Chester's original cathedral. A monk has been seen wandering through the pews. At the groves by the River Dee, the ghost of Jenny is said to lie beneath the waters, waiting to grab and drown an unsuspecting man. Built in 1591 on the site of an old priory dating back hundreds of years prior, Stanley Place in Chester has a vast history stretching back to medieval times. The stories of paranormal activity are as vast as its history. Locals and volunteers have reported a significant number of strange happenings over the years. The disembodied sounds of children laughing and singing are a frequent occurrence, often accompanied by the sound of them running room to room. The sound of clogged shoes can also be heard walking along the wooden floorboards in the building's empty rooms, as well as an unexplained stale smell of cigarettes and cigars. One of the most reported occurrences at Stanley Place, however, is the figure of a hooded man walking around the older parts of the building. It's said that the man could be a Dominican friar who still enjoys roaming the building, but the spirit of a woman wearing 17th century style dress has also been spotted walking the corridors, as if she is looking for something. Some of the other ghosts in residence include a man wearing Tudor style clothing, an army officer in circa World War II uniform, and a lady with grey hair that sits by the piano.